the same experience, as we lived with, releasing, this what is irrefutable, evidence of what was done, by Norfolk Southern and Associates. I mean, like chemical companies that they were hauling things for that were involved in the derailment of the 3rd of February of 2023. And everyone is complicit, the corrupt authorities in Ohio, all the way from the governor, down to the authorities that were there on the scene, the mayor Trent of East Palestine. There was never a recorded westerly wind from the derailment site that's on the Pennsylvania border, where you can stand there and see the "Welcome to Pennsylvania" sign. You can stand there where the train derailment occurred, outside of the town limits. Literally, the sign for East Palestine you can't even see from the derailment site where it happened. I don't believe so. I don't think you can even see the sign. It's west of where the derailment occurred. Now, anyway, the obfuscating, the redirecting of positioning of, by Norfolk Southern. They have a lot of money and they can employ, the brightest, people that have doctorates in psychology and marketing. They know just how, these people, which I think is such a dishonorable duty. I would be so ashamed of myself if I was any part of forming their narratives and carrying these insidious lies that Norfolk Southern put out there, intentionally, and use the media, using their power, to do so, since they've got the hooks in the media too. So many corporations own, what we know as of the major media. Alphabet, the alphabet media, ABC, NBC, CNBC, CNN, whatever the hell, you know what I mean? I'm talking about the major media. That, from the time we're children, if you're in my generation, anywhere around there, you're brought up to trust, them. And there's like a sacred trust, if they say there's going to be a hurricane, tornado, thunderstorm, the heat index, whatever the hell it is, you listen. And they give you warning. You trust that they will. But there I was, the night of that massive illegal disposal that Norfolk Southern illegally did there on the Pennsylvania border. The clouds, the chemical clouds were, so heavy, with contaminants that they were dragging on the ground through Pennsylvania. I captured all of that. When I say all of that, I captured that, in Beaver County. What I could capture, was on video. There's so much of it. It was so massive, it was throughout Beaver and Lawrence County anyway. But WTAE, that's what is that? I'm not sure which affiliate that is of. If it's ABC, CBS. I'm not sure which one that they are from. Channel 4 Action News, out of Pittsburgh. But they're major media, for Pittsburgh and surrounding area. But there they were. Their crew was sitting right there. I captured them on video, time-stamped cellular video that I uploaded immediately onto Twitter. There's also that. There was no chance of it ever being, altered or what have you. It's an actual time-stamped, irrefutable evidence. They were sitting there under those poisonous clouds. I mean, literally, they were dragging on the ground there at Route 168 and Route 51 there in Darlington Township in Beaver County, Pennsylvania. That is east of, the derailment, and again, East Palestine is west of the derailment, west of the border where the Pennsylvania border where the actual derailment occurred. And there is not a recorded wind that ever went into East Palestine. From the time of the derailment fires, all of that shit went into Pennsylvania, into Beaver County, all the way down. You can see it on radar. There's radar imagery, a history. You can see it even go all the way down to Aliquippa. Now, what you see is what is really thick. Now, that stuff was from the fires. It isn't like it went a mile up into the air. It was low, and it was also dragging on the ground. If you go into any of those areas even now today, you hang around there a while, you'll get that taste in your mouth. The same smell and taste you get when you're on Taggart Road, right there, the road from off of which the derailment occurred. The road that you drive, and there's the welcome to Ohio, welcome to Pennsylvania when you're leaving from Ohio, right there. So much insidious. And that if that's not bad enough, that they lied and said there was one container that was volatile that could explode and send shrapnel out a mile into people's homes, and they said that the smoke was so hazardous and dangerous, to people's health that they evacuated everyone from the area. If that's not bad enough, that on the premise of one container that they said they had to release the pressure of, that's all they said, and that scare. They didn't say how they were going to do that, but of course, when you hear them use such nomenclature that they invented as controlled release, you think they're going to release the pressure of. But they went in there, after they activated the criminal governor. Let's name him. Do you know what his name is? DeWine, Governor DeWine, and of Ohio, the governor of Ohio, that weasel, that corrupt, he's a corrupt piece of shit. He's a monster. He's a criminal, a heinous criminal now. This is heinous what was done. Not just the illegal burning off of everything that was left on that site, that the Associated Press, they said that they reported the day after the derailment that Norfolk Southern told them there were 14 containers, that's tankers, of vinyl chloride, and that there were 20 containers that were labeled as carrying hazardous materials. If you look at, you can use your eyes and look at the drone footage. Someone had courage enough to fly over that, I'm saying, and publish it. You can count that there are more than 30 containers that are charred after they, burn it all off. But let's get back to them, the governor, under a false state of emergency that he declared, which is traitorous to the extent that in another time in our nation's history, he might well have been met with the gallows. They might have actually executed him for that, using our military. He activated our military under that state, that false state of emergency, to stand as guard, to keep anyone from going in there and recording the preparation for the massive illegal disposal of everything that was left on that site. Everything that they hadn't already intentionally, let burn off, illegally dispose of. You see, they had to go in there and actually put the fires out. They said they could get nowhere near them. They told everyone that, but they went in there and they had to put the fires out. That's why they had to keep people out of there that no one would capture them doing that. Because you can't, dump those volatile, flammable contents of the containers, as those carcinogenic industrial chemicals, into a trench that you have then made with heavy equipment, when you moved it in there. You can't hardly do all that in preparation for, the massive disposal, massive burn off of everything without putting out the fires first. You see, you have to put the fires out in order to do that, to make it safe so those workers can get in there and do the work that needs to be done. The contractors that they brought in from out of state, who should be in jail, they should be in jail too. So under that lie, he activated our military. I'm a two-branch veteran. I'm not a hero, but I can tell you that I served our nation honorably. I'm a two-branch veteran. And actually, I started off, I was 17 when I went into the National Guard, when I went through boot camp at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I'm really offended that he used our National Guard to guard a criminal, to guard in criminal activity. That's exactly what he did. There is no way around it. That's what he did. He used our military to guard, to guard that site. Now, the day before that, I had been on the Route 51 looking down the tracks towards where the derailment was on the Pennsylvania border, and I captured on video, what was, there was even an employee, I presume it was an employee, with just regular, like a vest on, a caution vest on. He didn't have on no hazmat gear or anything, but he was standing down there monitoring things, from the Pennsylvania side, where they were burning off, these railroad cars. And I sent it out to the media, which, that was really a naive thing to do, because I don't know how many of them contacted Norfolk Southern and told them, because I think that's what kicked it into gear with their, lie about the one container being volatile, to then scare everyone into doing what they did, to then, do a massive, just illegal. Repeat that about 10,000 times, and maybe you'll actually get that into your, into what this actually did occur. It's illegal what they did. Oh, good Lord. So that was a real mistake, that I made by doing that. How could I have known? I was trying to help the people there. I could see from Chippewa there was smoke coming over into Pennsylvania. That far out, you can see the smoke still coming in, and that was on a Sunday afternoon, Saturday and Sunday, all throughout. And I'm thinking, and I'm like, I worked up the courage, to get up there and get the footage and send it out to the media, because I knew that what they were doing was wrong, and I didn't know what was involved. Nobody was saying what all chemicals were involved. Still here in Pennsylvania, where they got the millions of pounds, where most all of it went onto was Pennsylvanians. Nobody here's given a list of chemicals and how dangerous they are, even to this very day. But so that's a thing. They went ahead and did this, and they declared that corrupt criminal Governor DeWine. He declared a state of emergency within 2 hours of me sending that footage out. It just goes to show it was a real lesson for me. In Jesus' name, we can't guide our own footsteps, and I made a real mistake maybe by doing that. But would they have done it anyway? Were they looking for a reason to do that? Did they just need that? Because I was just told recently by a fireman here in Darlington Township, he said that while I was on that bridge, when I got that footage Sunday afternoon of the 5th of February, he said that he was told by another fireman, they were told that they had sent out the authorities on me to detain me up on that bridge. Now, it could have been that the media, there was either Channel 2 or Channel 21, the Youngstown, I'm not sure which one. I'm sorry, but they were up there when I captured that footage on the 5th, looking down the tracks, which was cars in Pennsylvania that they were burning off, and I offered to give them my footage. And by the time that I crawled, whatever, got down on it was very difficult because I have a lot of physical, challenges. Got down the tracks and got that perspective as from the tracks, looking down to get the, recording them burning it off. And when I made it back up to the top of the bridge on Route 51, where I taped, I got footage from the bridge perspective too, they were gone. So it could be that whoever that media was, they were the ones that contacted the authorities, Norfolk Southern, all the criminals complicit in what was done, to then have them, they were gonna arrest me, detain me. But I didn't even know that. I got out of there right before they arrived. Hallelujah. Imagine that if I'd have been detained. I wonder where it would have gone. Now, looking back on it, it would have been, if I would have had to, if I could have, I'd have probably bellied in there when, if I could have made it into and captured them, preparing everything for the massive disposal. I don't know. I would have tried. If I would have known what they were going to do, I would have captured all of that and would have released that too. But fate, in Jesus' name, happening as it did, as it is now, is what I'm saying. I walked outside right when the fallout, from the massive disposal on the 6th, when it was crawling through Pennsylvania at 2-3 miles per hour. It dropped. Those poisonous clouds were dragging on the ground. And I captured the video, and time-stamped cellular video, and released it onto Twitter. And then also captured WTAE there, under the fallout. That's the thing about it. They never warned anybody. They never warned anyone. And, it's hard to understand what is so significant about that, I guess, unless maybe you get it right away. But it took me days to realize that they hadn't aired that footage. it's hard to wrap my mind around it. It was hard to, and I understand why it'd be hard for someone to come to that realization. That's like an epiphany, you know. Wow, they did what? So then you know that intentionally, you know, that news crew they didn't air the footage intentionally. There were thousands of people intentionally that were not given an opportunity to shelter in place. They were left oblivious. Now, how insidious, how evil is this? How is that? You know, that is still being carried, the narrative. No one has the courage to even mention what I just said, and everybody knows it. When I say everyone that needs to know knows. I'm talking about all the way from, you know, from our local attorney general all the way up to our administration. So everyone knows. That includes Governor Shapiro, who I begged, you know, I championed him to do the right thing, to go after, you know, get criminal indictments. You see, somebody called that executive, or the executives at WTAE, Channel 4 Action News in Pittsburgh, and told them not to air the footage. You know, in Beaver and Lawrence County, when you think about what that means, okay, they turned what was then, it would have been the criminal. They could have got people on the criminal, but the, you know, civil liabilities, what we're talking about with damages, you know, what that is for thousands of people, because being as I don't even know all of the chemicals that were involved, and what, you know, the how long it takes for them to deteriorate, you know, where they're so dangerous and not so dangerous, you know, because they didn't say anything. Pennsylvania, the Norfolk Southern used the media to obfuscate, to keep it quiet. No one would say Pennsylvania. You can't find any reports where they're going to say Pennsylvania or anything about Beaver County or Darlington Township until like a month afterwards. Then started seeping in because our authorities had seen the video. It's irrefutable. And knowing that it's been out there, knowing that there were thousands of hits, knowing that even, you know, it was reposted by someone. I know it was reposted by someone working for, you know, an associate or directly working for Norfolk Southern with money, meaning promotion, on TikTok, where it got hundreds of thousands of views. And then Joe Rogan, he had the footage that I had captured in Darlington, Pennsylvania, Beaver County. He was talking about it on the Joe Rogan Experience, but he was referring to the TikTok upload that whoever it was that did that, you know, the evil people that did that, because when I say evil, they relisted it and titled it Darlington, Ohio. You know, it's just more positioning, the psychological positioning, you know, there for, you know, East Palestine, Ohio, where Pennsylvania is never. Imagine that everything happened on the Pennsylvania border. There was nothing but winds blowing into Pennsylvania, easterly winds, and Pennsylvania never was in anyone's mouth. Now, that, you know, that's so everywhere here in Pennsylvania, that there were particles everywhere of the contaminants, carcinogenic industrial chemicals. You see, they waited. That was like they were waiting, man. They were waiting for rains to do what? To dissipate everything, to get it down into the soil, to wash it into the streams, you know, to dissipate it, because there should have been people over here. You know, I'm sorry to tell you. I'm sorry to say this. You know, if anyone's offended, then that's too bad. But you have to think about if this would have been you, because I was seriously symptomatic for a month from the exposure I got. And that's just from the time I was, you know, and the smells changed from a sweet petro the night of the 6th, you know, over the next 3 days. In the house, it smelled like there was a vat of nail polish that had been dumped in the house. So it was a different chemicals, a cocktail of them, meaning that everything that was on that site, the derailment site, Norfolk Southern, disposed of it that way. Instead of, you know, shipping it out and disposing of it like in incinerators, facilities that handle hazardous materials to nullify the properties of them, they fucking said, I'm going to save this money and fucking do it right here on the site. Fuck it. I'm just being real. That's what they did. If you don't like the word fuck in context with, you know, thousands of people being left oblivious and contaminated with carcinogenic industrial chemical that can quite possibly lead to premature death. We're talking about blood cancer and bone cancer, tumors, you name it, fucking brain cancer. What? I mean, what? The carcinogens, we don't know what, they don't even know. There's the cocktail of these carcinogens. I don't think they even know how bad it could be, how bad it will be, or whatever. I'm just being real about it. So it's so insidious. It's just as insidious as waiting for rains to dissipate it, to wash it away. Instead of having in the specialists that could have taken measurements of what it was here. An accurate measurement then of what the fallout, and then it would have varied too, because in places there were these massive, black, there were black clouds. You can see in my video that are dragging on the ground. There might have been an area, that killed everything. All the wildlife. It was just by. I'm telling you, man. I'm sure that the people that made the decision not to warn anybody, to allow people to remain oblivious because of the billions of dollars in damages in Lawrence and Beaver County. They were probably had to be thinking about like what happened with Bhopal. They were probably thinking that shit, it could happen. It might be that there are going to be thousands of people that are going to end up being killed over this. They didn't know, man. Imagine that. They didn't know, and yet they went ahead and did it anyway. They made sure that no one had the opportunity to shelter in place. The word is mitigate, to keep from, getting, as bad of a dose of it. Of the chemicals. How can I put this? So you can, if you're in your house and you've got duct tape and you're able to, close up whatever cracks so that it slows down. Especially at the time of the fallout. When it's all so thick, the particles are in the air. Then, that would have been a real plus, man. You could, so. I don't know how bad it was the next morning, when next morning, Tuesday morning, there were kids out waiting for the bus and what have you. I don't know how bad, it was then, but the particles were all there. It didn't rain for like a week. We got a misting in between that time and like a week from then we got a rain. Then whatever there was, these particles, they gassed. You could smell it here in Darlington. It smelled like akin to a junkyard, but but it was a nasty smell, like the smell that you smell if you go down Taggart Road. But that happened twice. I remember we had rains where it gassed. So we're talking about two different rains. Where it was still the second rain that happened was maybe weeks after that first big rain, and it smelled again. And you could see that there were particles. I had particles that were on containers I could see them. Of course, you can't see so many of the particles. I mean, what you could see, there were some you could see. But there are a lot, of course, you're not going to be able to see. Evidently, I couldn't see them the night that I got contaminated, where I was symptomatic for a month after that. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see it around me, is what I'm saying. Whatever it was falling, and it was there, Whereas I thought, I'm looking up, and I see them dragging on the ground, but I'm thinking that I'm not getting it. Like, it's like it's heading to where they're going to get it. But in the area I was, yeah, we got it, and there were areas that got a lot worse. I don't know. My wife and I went for a drive afterwards, which would have been a couple weeks after the massive, disposal. And I saw this raccoon crossing the road. It was real lethargic. And then another place on Route 18 by the Beaver River, that's in between Coppell and Wampum. Say like in between Elwood City and Newcastle. That area. I saw these deer that were crossing the road, and in all my life, I've always been an outdoorsman from the time I was a kid, a hunter, been out in the woods a lot. I have never seen deer like this that night that were so lethargic crossing the road. Man, I'm telling you, it put me in tears. I knew that there was something really bad had happened. So if you'd have been out in the woods in any of that time, you probably would have found a lot of animals that were dead. Vultures will take care of a lot of that. There's a cleanup crew out there. But I know that there were. I know that there were. And you couldn't see a bird in this town. For how long? It was like a month. I'm not exaggerating. Because I love watching the birds. I love listening to birds. You couldn't hear or see a bird. I'm not saying that it killed all the birds, but they were gone, man. They knew. Boom. They beat it. I don't know where they went to. They went out of the area that was so bad. They're not going to stay. They can. There's. I am presuming they have sensory systems that are much keener. Can be. But did it kill a lot of birds? I don't know. I don't know because I didn't go outside then. Like I was inside. I ended up in bed for like 3 days, and I had the shits, really bad diarrhea. I had a massive headache that if you even move, one of those headaches, it was like excruciating pain. Had a burning in my chest. I had a cough. The fatigue, like I said, I spent time in bed, and the chemical made me cold. To my core, like I had to put a sleeping bag in the dryer to get warm. All the while, everyone, I championed, our authorities, and I championed some more than others, but it really gets me, about our Governor Shapiro. Because a month after this all happened, he sent out what would be a mobile health clinic that was here at the community center in Darlington Township. And I didn't know what to make of that because all they did was they were interviewing people. So I'm wondering, where's this going? So then in time, when I realized that he wasn't doing anything, he didn't do anything. I hear in the news that he accepted $7 million from Norfolk Southern in a pledge to give emergency responders, like new equipment and what have you. So there it was, all these thousands of people in Western Pennsylvania. They got some amount of contamination, some more than others. And he bargained, made this deal with Norfolk Southern. What would be I'm sorry, Governor, it was a soft bribe. You took a soft bribe. That's all there was. Going to give things to these responders. So how does Norfolk Southern buy their loyalty? The firemen and first responders. I mean, obviously, with the equipment, with whatever that is. And I don't know about the silencing settlements. Like right now, today is the 7th of August, 2024, and everyone is all in a frenzy over the money that they're getting. I have no part of it. Well, how could I? And what would you think of me? I'm telling, if I'm in Jesus' name, I'm sharing these truths that were made light of God, Yahweh, the Almighty. That's something that I cannot, I'm not going to corrupt to the best of my will, my ability before the living God. So, everything I spoke about this matter is true, and I haven't received anything. I sensed at one point there was someone that was going to try to give me money. I'm not going to say who it was, but I was quickened about it, and they were trying to get a hold of me, trying to have a meeting with me, and I knew better than to even entertain it. You know what I'm saying? And I'm so grateful in Jesus' name that I was held from that. Hey man, we can all fall into, being tempted and be taken into something. So in everything that I speak of here, I'm giving thanks, praising the living God, the God of Abraham, the God and Father as who we know of as Jesus Christ, birth name Yeshua of Nazareth, risen, exalted, glorified. He's same, and you hear Yeshua, hallelujah. Hear it. It's a sound, man. Sound. The sound of the living God, his name. It's, the shortened form of it. We hear it all around the world, don't we? Hallelujah. Yah. Hallelujah. It can be spelled in all different ways, but isn't that the way it sounds? So I'm grateful. I'm grateful what has been made light of this whole situation. I believe, I'm sorry to say, that the governor, he sent that mobile health clinic in here as like a feeler to see how many people were going to come out and give testimony, and politically where that was. I'm sorry to tell you, but because I didn't see him. This guy is known for what? He was the state's attorney general before he became governor. He was put into that position of being governor as an opportunity to go ahead and bring these people to justice. That was his purpose, and that's what his office was for. God knows all things. He knew that this was going to happen. He knew everything. And still, it's a matter of free will, everyone. We're given the opportunity. You can alter what that is. God knows all things, but he still gives us an opportunity. And God alters time as well. Yes, if Governor Shapiro was stepped up as a crusader of justice and treated this on the same set of scales that's for every one of us, instead of impunity to what is a criminality that was committed, that the evil of it is on the same is parallel to like Nazi war crimes. When you think about what was done, keeping a people oblivious to not being given an opportunity to mitigate contamination, so that they become contaminated with carcinogenic industrial chemicals that can lead to, cancer, to such a horrible suffering, premature death. What is that? Look, if you don't feel anything about what I've said, well, there's always this to think about. You might get a lesson. You might actually, if you're important enough to the Almighty God, if He may allow you to actually experience something where you will have empathy. God works in mysterious ways. It's like, I know that there was one time I was on a train, and I watched this guy he was drug off of a seat, and he had, from where I looked in my perspective, he had his eyeball kicked out of his head. He was taking that kind of a beating, and I sat there on that subway car with like whatever it was, 60 other people or more. It was packed. Nobody did anything to help that guy that got drug off of that seat. And the guy that did the beating, he went in between the cars. He left. And I leaned into my wife and I whispered to her, because I felt so horrible about myself. And I said, this is the worst moment. I think the worst I've ever felt about of myself. I'm such a coward. I felt so horrible about myself that I didn't help that man. Then the guy that did the beating comes back into the car. He sits directly, across from me. He's got on sunglasses, and it's literally like between 1 a.m. 2 a.m. He's got sunglasses on. He's got a hood, like a hoodie on, and it's pulled up on his head. And I could feel this guy was anatomizing, measuring me up. I knew he was going to. In Jesus' name, I was quickened that he was going to attack me next. So I had a bottle of wine that I had been with my wife. We had shared for where we had been earlier in the evening. And it was empty. I was just carrying it, to dispose of it, when we get off the train. And I acted like there was still something in the bottle and made that perpetrator think that I was drunk. I put it in his mind that I was going to be a lot easier for him for him to go ahead and take care of, dispatch of, which that's what he planned to do with me as well. So when I got up from my seat, when it was our stop, my wife, she got off on the platform, and I was heading that way, and out of the corner of my eye, I'm talking about from the back of my vision, I don't even know how I could have seen him, but I saw him flick the hood off his head as he was getting up. His sunglasses, the same motion were put on the seat, and he's doing this, and I saw his fist ball as he's getting up, and he was coming towards me from behind. In truth, in Jesus' name. This happened in the far periphery of my vision, man, because I'm facing the door heading out, and he had been seated directly across from me. So I met him. My wife jumped back in the train, and it was on. That fight, man. And nobody lifted a finger to help me. Nobody lifted a finger. And the fight, man, it was a hell of a fight. And he didn't hit me one time. I was fortunate in Jesus' name. My wife hit me a few times. She had an umbrella. She put some like egg-sized bumps on my skull, so she might have hit him a few times too. But we ended up on the floor, and he was on top of me because the car shifted on the tracks. And at that point, I had reached up and I had his esophagus in the palm of my hand. The only thing that was keeping, like, I had the whole thing. The skin from either side of his neck, I was touching with my fingertips. I'd broken through. I had his windpipe in my hand, and I was ready to just rip his throat out. And like there it was, man. I heard, as like time literally just stood still, and I heard it said to me, you don't have to do that. And man, that was an eternity of a moment right there. So I controlled him with the hold I had on his windpipe from the bottom, and I stood him up, believe it or not, truth. And I sat him down in the seat, and I was still overcome with, the moment. I was ready to just, lay it into him as he was sitting there, just pummel him for what the hell he had done. And I was just quickened by God's grace, and I didn't. But I bring the point up to you is you never know. You never know for anyone that doesn't give a shit about, what happened to anyone in any situation, whether it be here or whether it be, the tens of thousands of people right now, those defenseless peoples, that are homeless, being terrorized, over there in the Middle East. And you do nothing, say nothing. But you never know, when something's going to happen, and it can turn on you, and you'll find your thing. God can allow something to happen. If you may be important enough, and I feel like that is, he liable to let something happen to snap you, correct you, to get your mind right. We should care about other people, and so it's impossible for me not to. I was driven, to capture that video of them intentionally burning off containers that probably did lead to their lie and them burning off everything on the site and what they did. I don't know what they would have done, what the other plan would have been. Probably some other insidious bullshit they would come up with. Maybe the exact plan, but under just different circumstances. I don't know. Maybe they were just looking for an excuse to enact that plan, of doing what they did. But everything that I've testified to is true. And about our governor, I don't know. I don't know what to say. Man, he's a hell of an actor, I can tell you that much. He is one hell of an actor. Because all I saw was just an act, even with when he's in the running for being considered for this VP pick. All I saw was a really good actor, man. And if he would sacrifice thousands of people for whatever it was that he thought he was going to be able to do in a higher office, maybe he was promised help doing that by the corporations that run this nation, or whatever it might be. Because Vance, I can tell you in truth, Vance, his litmus test was burying his head in a stream in East Palestine. He never mentioned anything about Pennsylvania, about what happened. And I would hope that he's able to look at, radar, and understand that everything, went over into Pennsylvania. Oh, you're really in bad shape if he's that dumb. And he's about, certainly Trump knows that Pennsylvania got hit. Is he that dumb? That's why he really didn't have much to say about what happened. The volume just went up on the TV. It's time for me to shut down. I'll take that as a nudge. I've said enough. There really isn't much more to say, is there? Is it going to be impunity that's given, to these corporations, or is someone going to exercise courage and do something and handle the situation as their oath of office has bound them to do?